look at what we're looking at today. So I got a cool question, and someone asked, and maybe this was you. You can say that was me. But let me open this up right here really quick. I'm going to show you what we're working on today. All right. So today we are looking at how does hair grow? Okay. Somebody asked like, well, how does hair grow? And I thought that's a really good question because everyone, a lot of people have hair, and where does it come from? What's the process? What's going on? And I have an experiment today. It's going to show you something I think really interesting that maybe you guys didn't know before. So let's start here. Okay, we're going to talk about what literally is hair. Like what is going on with that one strand. And remember, this is all microscopic, and we're like zooming in so you can see up close these different parts of the hair that I'm going to talk about. So the first thing is we call this the hair follicle right here. This where I have the blue arrow. So this is our piece of skin right here, this little brown part. That's our piece of skin. And then below that is what we have is called the hair follicle. And the hair follicle is the part of the hair that is in the scalp. Okay, so you guys know your scalp is that thing that covers the layer of skin covering your facial muscle, your facial bones and muscles. So it's embedded in the scalp. It's inside there, and the follicle is kind of like a tunnel, and it has a couple of different parts. It's almost like a little channel, and it is shaped this way, like a little teardrop. And then at the bottom of that channel, this is our hair follicle channel, this kind of like whitish, I guess you could say whitish grayish thing. And at the bottom here, we have that is the hair bulb. Okay, so the hair bulb is really where the magic happens, where hair growth really starts from. So there's a couple of things. That yellow thing at the bottom, that's called the papilla. And the papilla has lots of blood vessels and nerve endings from your skin. So it's actually it connects to your skin. It has a lot of nerves and blood, and it helps the cells that make up your hair. It gives them oxygen, the nutrients that they need to grow. So the papilla is kind of like the feeding center for your hair cells, for the cells that make up your hair. And if you guys remember, I think you were here for this, at least some of you, that hair is made up of cells, and cells are these tiny microscopic, little, it's you have atoms that's smaller than cells, but cells is kind of like the tiniest functioning unit of life. So we actually do it's nourishing those cells. And then you also have this stuff called the matrix, which is right here. It's in that purple like capsule, and the matrix is kind of like gooey, but it basically surrounds that papilla, and it has something called keratinocytes. And you don't need to know the word exactly, but keratinocytes, what they do is that they're special cells, right? They're those little tiny things that make keratin. Does anyone know what keratin is, or have you heard of keratin before? Anyone? No, keratin is actually a protein. So it's a protein. And remember, I think last week we did a lesson on proteins and how they form. Keratin's a protein, and it gives your hair strength and structure. That's why your hair is shiny, smooth, and it doesn't like rip apart like when you touch it, right? It kind of takes a little bit of tugging. That's why it's because of keratin. It's a strength protein. So now going back to the hair follicle, that pink part that I have, this little like pink loop right here, that's representing, it's called the internal root sheath. And that really just grows around those keratinocytes. And those keratinocytes make keratin, and it eventually dissolves. But we also have an external root sheath, which is this red thing here. And that just kind of grows around that matrix, grows around the matrix of gooey hair cells that we know. Okay. And I say gooey because I think of them all compacted, these keratinocytes. They're making keratin, and that's hair is really made up of keratin. So it's kind of cool. So just kind of important, guys, that we get this knowledge here. And then up here at the very tippy top, that is supposed to be a little piece of hair. And you see this thing called the shaft, and that's called the hair shaft. So the hair shaft, when someone says, oh, I see your hair, you could say, actually, you're seeing my hair shaft. The shaft is the part that you see. The follicle's inside, but the shaft is the part that breaks the skin. Okay? So just important stuff to know and to keep track of, all right? Now, how does hair grow? Hair grows just like anything else. Think about how you guys grew. You started as babies, and then you got a little bit taller, a little bit taller, a little bit taller. You keep getting bigger and bigger. Hair pretty much works the same way in that it doesn't, like, you didn't lose. It's not like you completely changed, like you turned into a brand new person. You stayed the same person. You had the same DNA and the same, everything about you was the same, but you're just starting to grow. That's how hair is. We don't really lose anything. We just keep adding new things. So hair grows. It's those keratinocytes that I mentioned earlier. That's what they do. Keratinocytes, they divide. So over here on the left, guys, those are my blue little keratinocytes. I made them blue. But keratinocytes are cells, right? So they just keep dividing. They just multiply. So you might start with 1, then you get 2, then you get 4, and they just keep splitting in half and growing more keratinocytes, right? So those keratinocytes, they produce more keratin. As you have more keratinocytes, you're going to have more of that protein being produced because that's what they do. It's their job. So when you have more of them being produced, the old keratinocytes start to get pushed up. Okay, so it's kind of like I'm trying to think of it's just like you keep on adding more. So like here we have these light blue keratinocytes. Okay, fine. Well, now
it's like porcupines, kind of, right?
Kind of like porcupines, like they just keep growing and growing, and it's pushing the old stuff out. Okay, so they keep dividing and it just gets and really these old keratinocytes right now, by the time we get over here, guys, the keratinocytes, the light blue ones, they're kind of old news. We have now purple ones to deal with. So the old ones end up getting pushed up and out. And the keratinocytes, they don't live forever, okay? They aren't always alive. Once they get pushed out to this top part here, and up here, this is about where we're getting to the skin and the hair shaft, they die. So those dead keratinocytes, they're dead, right? But they still made a ton of keratin. And keratin's that great protein. That's what makes really makes our hair hair. It makes it strong. It makes it smooth. So once the hair leaves the shaft, it's really just made up of dead keratinocytes. They're dead. That's why when you cut your hair, you don't feel anything. But if you tug on your hair, you're going to feel it because it's still attached to those alive keratinocytes. But when you cut your hair, you're not going to feel it because these are dead keratinocytes, dead hair cells, but they do have the keratin that they produce, and that keratin's good for strengthening. So oftentimes, now here's a question that I actually had. That's why I'm going to bring it up. Why does the arm on your hair not grow super long, right? Did you ever think about that? Like, your head of hair, I'm sure your hair, you have to get lots of haircuts, but the hair on your arms, it doesn't really like get that long. Why? Anyone have any ideas for why, maybe? Any guesses? No wrong guesses, anything.
Because we're not cavemen?
Because we're not cavemen. I suppose, maybe a little bit. I can kind of build off of that. So basically, guys, what happens is our hair follicles...
Because you're not an ape.
If you're not an ape. So a lot of it does have to do, right? A lot of it does have to do with your genetics and your DNA. But more so, if we're looking like physically what happens, those hair follicles, remember, this is our follicle right under the skin. What happens sometimes is that hair follicles, they'll be active, so they'll be producing keratinocytes and tons of hair, and then sometimes they're not active. Sometimes they just stop working. They stop producing that stuff. And they go into rest. It's kind of like they just take a break, like not making any more keratinocytes, not making any more hair for, a month or something. So really it depends on the hair follicle. Every hair follicle is different. So the hair follicles on your head, they are always active. That's why your hair grows long. You get a lot of hair. On your arm, these hair follicles on your arm aren't always active. A lot of times they go dormant. So they kind of go to sleep where they won't be working for a couple months at a time. So that is why they're just different follicles and they work differently. And then another thing, when you shed hair, okay, so if you're to run your hand through your hair right now, you might pull out a piece of hair and you're thinking, well, how does that work? Follicles, you're not losing the hair follicle, okay? The follicle is kind of like this encapsulation. It's kind of like a bubble that holds these rich keratinocytes that are producing keratin that make the hair. The hair follicle holds the hair, but when you're shedding hair, you're not losing the hair follicles. The follicles are still under your skin. It's losing that strand of hair, but that's okay. It's going to grow a new strand. It's just going to be producing some more keratinocytes. So here, let's say I got rid of this like tricolor hair strand. That's all right. I didn't lose the follicle. The follicle will keep producing those keratinocytes and produce a new strand. Okay. So it's kind of cool, kind of confusing, but if you think about it like that, it makes it a lot simpler. Okay, so here's another question, right? Why do some people have curly hair and some people have straight hair? If you're like me, you see it like I look like the girl on the right. I have super curly hair. why. And, maybe you have straight hair, or maybe you're kind of like this guy over here with wavy hair. So the reason, it has to do with the shape of your hair follicle, okay? It is based on genetics. Genetics, or DNA, we were talking a little bit about that last week. Your DNA determines how your follicle is going to be shaped. And then from there, that's how we get different hair textures. So if you have straight hair, okay, your hair follicle is straight up and down. It's really symmetrical. It looks like this. And then our piece of hair, those keratinocytes, grow straight up because the channel that they grow in is straight. Now think about if you were like on a ferry. If you're on a ferry and there's lots of winding parts, right, you have to keep going through those different channels and changing directions. So with wavy hair, we see that the channel is shaped a little differently. The channel is kind of slanted. It's not perfectly symmetrical. And what that happens then is that when the keratinocytes are produced and they're making that strand of hair, they kind of end up tilting a little bit and having this weird curviness slightly. Now, if we're talking about curly hair, that's when it gets really, you're like, whoa, that's a big slant. Your hair follicle is like totally scooped out here. So those keratinocytes start here and they end up here. And then you end up with a strand of hair that has that curvy texture and that curvy pattern because the shape of the follicle, when it's released, it ends up with this curl because of the shape down here. So it actually all starts, even though you might see curls or straight hair, it all starts inside of the hair follicle. It depends on the hair follicle beneath the skin. Okay, now here's another thing, right? Can hair change? Yes, it actually can. So it's interesting. Hair actually, I read an article. I'm not sure the truth to this, but I'm going to say it. It said that hair actually changes every 7 years. Now, is that true? I don't think so. I've had curly hair since a long time. So I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I thought it's interesting, and it kind of spurred my interest, at least, in like, can hair change? Like, can you change from curly to straight hair or straight to curly? It can change depending on hormone changes and chemical treatments you might use on your hair. So, sorry, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
I need to take the shot for a hormone every day.
Yeah. So sometimes, sometimes we supplement hormones, or sometimes you might be getting rid of them. It depends, but that really changes.
Straight now, but I think I might have had wavy.
Yeah, see, it's weird, right? And maybe you think when you're a baby, wow, my hair, would you guys believe this? But when I was a baby, my hair was thick straight, and then it changed to curly. And it really has to do with hormones, right? My hormones probably changed and it produced a different hair texture. So really, when I say different hair texture, I just mean a different follicle shape. So if you have different hormones, sometimes a couple of them are like thyroxine, androgens, insulin, any of those things. Some of them are controlled by the thyroid and some are controlled by other, your pancreas or whatever. But really what happens is those hormones will end up changing the shape of your hair follicle, which then changes the hair that you see. Another thing, you can ask your parents, they might have gotten this, but it's called a perm. And a perm is basically a way to chemically treat your hair to turn it curly. So it kind of looks like this on the right. That's a perm when they put them in curlers and they put a lot of chemical in to get this curly to stay, right? Her hair wasn't curly to start with, but she turned it curly. It can produce curls, but it actually can change the protein configuration in the hair follicle. And by changing that, you can change the hair follicle, and it's a permanent change. So sometimes when people get a perm, their hair permanently changes to curly because not necessarily they change the outside, but they change the hair follicle inside. And when you change that, then you're changing what kind of keratinocytes, what they're going to do, what shape they're going to take. Okay. And another question, I'm just trying to think of questions that you guys might have about hair in general, because there's a lot of interesting science behind it. But I'm sure you guys know about hair changing color. And when people get old, their hair changes to gray or white. You might have some grandparents that are in that phase where their hair is gray or white. And you might think, why? So I mentioned that hair is made of keratinocytes, right? That's keratin, that's strong protein that makes it smooth. But there's also another type of cell inside of your hair. Your hair also has a cell called a melanocyte, and melanocytes produce something called melanin. So keratinocytes produce keratin, melanocytes produce melanin, and melanin is pigment, okay? So your natural pigment is produced by the melanocyte. So for me, it would be brown. For you, it might be blonde or black or red or whatever. But really, that produces hair color. So each strand of hair also contains melanocytes that make pigment for your hair. Now, when people get old, their melanocytes don't work anymore. They don't function. They don't produce pigment. And when they don't produce pigment, that's why you get white hair. So it really has to do with how old are you and do your melanocytes work anymore? And that's going to determine what type of hair color you're going to get. Okay? So I always like leaving you guys with something to think about. So I want you to discuss this. Think about this. How many different types of follicle shapes and melanin combinations are at play to produce the hair colors and textures you see? So how many different types of hair follicles? It's not just these three. I can tell you that. These all have different variations. So this might be more tilted to the right. This might be a little bit straighter. You might have different melanin combinations going on that produce, the cool red hair we see, or the really dark hair, or those colors, how does it, like, are there any things that you guys can think about that would, different types of those things that produce the different hair colors and textures? Okay. So yeah, so that's my presentation for y'all. And then we're gonna do our experiment, which I think you guys will like. Okay. So today I'm gonna this is actually an experiment I could do right here, I think. So I have this stack of books with a pencil. This is almost like a big ship. So let me explain what's going on here. So first thing, this is just a stack of books. Don't pay attention to it. It's just to hold something down. I have a pencil in here. This is just no tricks. This is a normal pencil, and taped onto this pencil is one strand of hair. Okay, and I got this just from a hairbrush. Okay, so you can all, I'm telling you guys this because you can try this at home too, and you can see what I'm talking about. So I took a strand of hair out of a hairbrush. That's what we have. I know it's quite hard to see. Let me quickly turn on the light. Maybe that would help. I'm gonna be right back. Okay. So anyway, so I put one strand of hair and I taped it to this pencil, okay? Single strand. So what we're going to do is we're going to test. I told you that keratin makes your hair strong. It's a protein that makes your hair really strong. And you might be thinking, girl, you're crazy, right? What do you mean my hair is strong, right? I'm sure you've broken a piece of hair before or something like that. But we're going to prove it by putting pennies onto this piece of hair and to see how many pennies this piece of hair can hold before it breaks. Okay, so any predictions? How many pennies do you think we're gonna get? Yeah, go for it. Whoever wants, just shout it out.
1 billion.
A billion pennies. I don't even think I have that many.
Oh, 100.
100? All right, let's see. Let's see how this is going here. So, and I apologize. I know you guys can't see the hair, but hair is so thin and hard to see, but you'll be able to see the pennies coming. So I'm going to tilt this down so you can see what the pennies look like. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 1 penny. Okay, and this is just a good unit to use for measure and to test for weight. A penny is, so let's see here. I'm going to tape this on the bottom. Let me get my piece of hair going. And all I'm going to do is take this and tape it. So penny 1. Okay, so here we go. Penny number 1 is taped. Okay, you guys see that? It's hanging, so it can hold 1 penny. Let's see how strong hair really is, right? Let's try 2 pennies. I'm gonna tape now, second penny on. And I'm taping them to each other, but they're all being taped onto this piece of hair. So this is only 1 piece of hair. Let's see. I need another piece of tape. And plus, guys, don't forget too that this tape, even though it's tape and it's pretty thin, it does have some weight to it. 2 pennies. Okay. I have 25 pennies total here, so we'll see how many we can get on before it breaks. Let's try penny number 3. Let's see if we get this. Penny number 3. Okay, let's keep going. Let's do penny number 4. I'm going to show you guys at the end what this stack really looks like, because I think you're going to be pretty surprised when you see like how pretty thick it is. Penny number 5. Okay, let's keep going. Let's do penny number 6.
I like how it's shaking.
Yeah, it is shaking, and part of it has to do. I have a heater on behind me, so part of it is it's blowing hot air. But it definitely is shaking because it's swinging. It's like a pendulum a little bit. This is penny number 1, 2, 3, 4. What did I count? 1, 2, 3. This is penny number 5. Okay. And that's okay. You see how it's hanging off. That's not a big deal as long as the weight's there. Penny number 6. Okay. Oop. See, sometimes it's kind of hard to get on. There we go. Penny number 6. Okay. Let's do penny number 7. Let's see what we get here. And this is just Scotch tape. This is nothing special. Penny number 7. Okay. Let's keep going. Penny number 8. Oop.
8 pennies weighs.
Penny number 8.
Why don't you weigh them with water bottles instead?
Water bottles. Well, part of the problem is that I don't have. I really have to secure it pretty well. I'd have to secure it pretty well to this piece of hair because it is heavy. Water bottle is really heavy, and I do think that would probably break this strand of hair. So right there, that actually just broke. So we got about. Let me see here. Or actually, wait a minute. No, the hair didn't break. I'm gonna tape this back on. Hair never broke. It just fell off the tape. That's all. So let me retape this let me do this really quick here. Let me retape this. Don't think that the hair broke. Hair did not break right now. This is just that the hair fell off the pencil. Okay. There we go. We're back. Hair did not break. It's still continuous. It's still hanging. So we have, let me count how many I have left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay. So we are right now at 8 pennies. Okay. Let's see if we can keep going here. Let's do, this is penny number 9. 9. And really, guys, I'm looking at this hair. It's not even fraying. It is a solid piece of hair. Nothing is breaking yet. Here we go, penny number 10. And when we add more, we might be able to start to see that kind of breakage. Here's penny number 10. Here's penny number 11. Okay. Penny number 11. Let's go to penny number 12. I want to keep going. Oh, it broke. So there we go. We got 11. Not bad. Okay, not a bad run. Part of this could have been too, guys, that hair is actually treated with this is my mom's hair, and it's actually treated with bleach solution. She dyes her hair. So like I said, guys, sometimes that can weaken the hair. It can remove some of the keratin from the hair. You're kind of stripping it of that. So that could also be part of the reason. If she had stronger hair, it might have held a little bit longer. But let me show you how many pennies we were able to fit onto that piece of hair right now. I'd like, if you guys can try this at home and tell me how many pennies you get, I'd be interested to see. You might be able to get 20. I had 25 here just in case. I was kind of thinking maybe we'd go that far. And really, guys, I'm holding this stack here. I mean, it's pretty heavy, in my opinion. I think it's quite heavy. So here we go. Let's see all these pennies we got here. All right. Here we are. Look at these cool things.
I was just getting the loose ones off.
And you could see what you could try using quarters here. You could try using something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we go, guys. Let's see it right here.
I'm a blonde.
Right here, guys. You see how many pennies I have? All right. Now, look at this. Come up here. Do you guys see all these pennies that I have right now? Yeah.
How much did this Scotch tape count as?
What'd you say?
What does the Scotch tape count as?
What do you mean in terms of weight?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty minimal. I mean, it's quite light. I'd say for tape, there really isn't too much going on here. It's pretty light. But anyway, you guys see all these pennies that we were able to pull off of that hair. All right, so we got quite a few pennies here. And when I'm holding on my hand, think about loose change. When you carry loose change in your pocket, right? It's pretty heavy, and that's what's going on here. It's pretty actually heavy, this change. So definitely something to think about. You know, if you get the chance to try it, it's pretty cool. And see how many pennies you can get on your hair and try it out. Okay. Anyone have any questions on anything? Yeah, Pandya, go ahead.
Is like curly hair or wavy hair or straight hair like stronger than other types of hair, or are they all the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that really they're all the same. It more depends on if you bleach your hair or if you're doing anything to this hair shaft, like the external hair that's removing the keratin. You know, anything that's removing that keratin is going to be making it weaker. But it doesn't matter if you have curly hair or straight hair or whatever. It's more about like, are you losing keratin? That's kind of the big thing. So we all, I mean, some people have produced more keratin than others just naturally. But regardless, I do think that, what happened there? Sorry, I think I lost. Okay. But regardless, yeah, no, that doesn't really make a difference. But good question. Any other questions, guys, before we wrap it up?
Nope.
Nope.
Oh.
All right.